When we talk about mental health, we often focus on the biological factors. We discuss neurotransmitters, brain scans, and chemical imbalances. While these biological components are undoubtedly important, they only tell part of the story. To truly understand mental health, we need to look beyond biology and consider the profound influence of culture. Culture shapes how we define and experience the world around us. It influences our beliefs, values, and behaviors. It's the lens through which we interpret our experiences, including those related to our mental well-being. Ignoring culture in the context of mental health is like trying to understand a painting by only looking at the brushstrokes, without considering the colors, composition, or the artist's intent. This is where a multicultural perspective becomes essential. It compels us to acknowledge that mental health is not a one-size-fits-all concept. What constitutes mental illness, how it manifests, and what is considered appropriate treatment can vary significantly across cultures. Failing to recognize these differences can lead to misdiagnosis, inadequate treatment, and a perpetuation of the disparities that exist in mental health care. Throughout this exploration, we'll delve deeper into the intersection of culture, identity, and mental health. We'll examine how oppression, inequity, and cultural misunderstandings impact the well-being of marginalized groups. By understanding these dynamics, we can begin to dismantle the barriers to care and create a more inclusive and equitable mental health system for everyone. Mental illness does not discriminate. It can affect anyone, regardless of their background. However, mental health care is not equally distributed. Marginalized groups face significant disparities in accessing quality mental health services. This disparity raises critical questions that demand our attention. Ethnic minorities more likely to be misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all? The answer is complex, rooted in systemic biases and cultural misunderstandings. We'll investigate the historical and ongoing to this disparity. Cultural differences shape the way mental illness is expressed, understood, and treated. Different cultures may have different ways of conceptualizing mental distress. Ignoring these to misinterpretations and ineffective treatment plans. We must envision what culturally affirming, socially just mental health care would look like. This vision requires us to challenge the dominant Western. We'll explore models of care that prioritize community and integrate traditional healing practices. By unpacking these questions, we can begin to dismantle the barriers. Empathy and a commitment to social justice, we can work towards a future where everyone has the opportunity to achieve optimal mental well-being. In an ideal world, access to quality mental health care would be a fundamental right, available to everyone regardless of their background. However, the reality is far from this ideal. Mental illness may not discriminate, but our mental health care system unfortunately does. Significant disparities exist in access to care, quality of treatment, and even the likelihood of receiving a proper diagnosis. These disparities disproportionately impact marginalized communities, perpetuating a cycle of disadvantage and suffering. Imagine two individuals, both struggling with similar symptoms of depression. One individual has access to comprehensive health insurance, lives in a neighborhood with a high concentration of mental health professionals, and comes from a cultural background where seeking therapy is normalized. This individual is more likely to receive a timely diagnosis, access evidence-based treatment, and experience positive outcomes. Now imagine the other individual who lacks health insurance, lives in a medically underserved area, and belongs to a culture where mental illness is heavily stigmatized. This individual faces significant barriers to care, is more likely to delay seeking help, and may never receive the treatment they need. These scenarios, while hypothetical, reflect the stark reality of mental health care disparities in many parts of the world. These disparities are not random or accidental. They are deeply rooted in systemic inequities, historical injustices, and ongoing forms of oppression that continue to marginalize certain communities. The extent of mental health care disparities is often hidden, obscured by a lack of comprehensive data, and a reluctance to confront uncomfortable truths. However, the available statistics paint a disturbing picture. According to the National Institute of Mental Health and the American Psychological Association's most recent findings, these disparities are glaringly apparent across various racial, ethnic, and social groups. Consider these alarming figures. White adults are almost twice as likely to receive mental health treatment compared to Black and Latinx adults. This disparity highlights the systemic barriers faced by communities of color, including limited access to culturally competent providers, cultural mistrust of the healthcare system, and socioeconomic factors that limit access to care. Furthermore, Asian Americans, despite facing significant mental health challenges, are the least likely racial group to seek psychological services, even when their symptoms meet the criteria for a diagnosis. This trend underscores the influence of cultural factors, such as stigma surrounding mental illness, a strong emphasis on family honor, and a tendency to prioritize physical health over mental well-being. The statistics for Native American communities are even more alarming. They face some of the highest suicide rates in the country, a stark indicator of the mental health crisis within these communities. Despite this urgent need, Native Americans encounter severe shortages of mental health providers, limited access to culturally appropriate care, and the enduring trauma of historical oppression. Section 3. The silent suffering, the impact of disparities. The human cost of mental health care disparities is profound. When marginalized communities face barriers to care, the consequences can be devastating, leading to a cycle of suffering that extends beyond the individual to impact families, communities, and future generations. The lack of access to quality mental health care can have wide-ranging repercussions, affecting physical health, educational attainment, employment opportunities, and overall well-being. For individuals struggling with mental illness, delayed or inadequate treatment can exacerbate symptoms, increasing the risk of hospitalization, substance abuse, and even suicide. The inability to access culturally competent care can further alienate individuals, leading to feelings of isolation, misunderstanding, and a reluctance to seek help in the future. Moreover, mental health disparities contribute to a culture of silence and stigma surrounding mental illness. When individuals from marginalized communities see others facing discrimination, misdiagnosis, or lack of access to care, they may be less likely to speak out about their own struggles or seek help for fear of judgment or further marginalization. This silence perpetuates a vicious cycle, preventing individuals from receiving the support they need and perpetuating the misconception that mental illness is uncommon or shameful within certain cultures. Breaking this cycle of silence requires a multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of mental health disparities and creates a more inclusive and equitable mental health care system. Why aren't people getting the help they need? Marginalized communities face systemic, cultural, and socioeconomic barriers to mental health care. Lack of affordable services and mental health professionals are significant obstacles. Financial constraints and navigating the healthcare system add to the challenge. Language barriers further complicate access to mental health care. These barriers perpetuate untreated mental health needs in marginalized communities. Section 2. The weight of the past. Cultural mistrust in mental health. Historical trauma and discrimination create deep mistrust in marginalized communities towards mental health services. This mistrust is rooted in a history of medical exploitation and neglect. The Tuskegee syphilis study exemplifies medical racism, fueling distrust in Black communities. Latinx communities, especially undocumented immigrants, fear seeking mental health care due to deportation risks. Cultural stigma and traditional beliefs also prevent many from seeking mental health help. Section 3. Lost in translation, the lack of cultural match. One of the most significant barriers to effective mental health care for marginalized communities is the lack of cultural match between providers and clients. Miscommunications and misdiagnoses occur when therapists fail to understand their clients' cultural backgrounds, beliefs, and values. Culture shapes our understanding of mental health and illness. Different cultures express emotional distress and seek help in unique ways. Some cultures emphasize somatic symptoms over psychological ones. Therapists must be attuned to these cultural nuances to avoid misinterpretations. Section 1. The misdiagnosis dilemma. When culture clashes with clinical practice. Misdiagnosis in mental health care can lead to inappropriate treatment and perpetuate stigma. It disproportionately impacts marginalized communities due to cultural bias and language barriers. Over-reliance on the DSM-5 without considering cultural factors is a significant issue. The DSM-5 is based on Western concepts and may not capture cultural nuances. Black individuals are more likely to be misdiagnosed with schizophrenia. Cultural biases and language differences contribute to misdiagnosis. Section 2. Beyond the DSM, Embracing Cultural Concepts of Distress. Recognizing cultural concepts of distress helps address limitations of standardized diagnostic tools and reduces misdiagnosis. These concepts reflect cultural values, beliefs, and social norms. Ataque de nervios in Latinx communities involves intense emotional outbursts. Susto, common in Latin American cultures, is caused by a traumatic experience. Symptoms include sleep disturbances, lethargy, and sadness. Understanding these concepts aids in culturally sensitive treatment plans. Section 3. Bridging the Gap Towards Culturally Informed Diagnosis. Bridging the gap between Western-based diagnostic systems and diverse cultural manifestations of mental illness requires a shift. Culturally informed diagnosis involves understanding the client's cultural background, beliefs, values, and life experiences. Clinicians should adopt cultural humility, recognizing biases and engaging with diverse communities. Section 1. Intersectionality, the complex tapestry of identity and oppression. Intersectionality shapes our experiences, opportunities, and challenges. Coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, it describes overlapping systems of discrimination impacting marginalized identities. Understanding intersectionality is crucial for addressing mental health vulnerabilities. Section 2. The Weight of Difference. Understanding minority stress. Minority stress theory posits that marginalized groups face unique stressors, increasing mental health challenges. This stress stems from navigating a world that constantly reminds you of your otherness. Addressing minority stress requires systemic change to combat societal inequalities. Section 3. From Theory to Practice. Applying intersectionality and minority stress in mental health care. Transform mental health care to be inclusive and responsive to all identities. Cultivate cultural humility, self-reflection, and understanding of oppression's impact on mental health. Create safe, affirming therapeutic environments and connect clients with community resources. Section 1. Through different lenses. Mental health in specific communities. Each community's unique history and norms shape mental health experiences. Black communities face challenges from systemic racism and historical trauma. Latinx communities' cultural values influence help-seeking behaviors. Section 2. Honoring traditions, embracing resilience, culturally adapted approaches. Culturally adapted approaches enhance engagement and trust. Native American practices like sweat lodges and talking circles offer holistic healing. Integrating traditional practices honors cultural heritage and resilience. Amplifying voices, empowering communities. A call for advocacy and action. Addressing mental health disparities requires collective effort. Support organizations and advocate for policy changes promoting mental health equity. Promote mental health literacy and challenge stigma within communities. Reimagining mental health from cultural competence to cultural humility. Move beyond cultural competence to embrace cultural humility. Cultural humility involves lifelong learning, self-reflection, and respect for clients' experiences. Acknowledge power dynamics and seek guidance from cultural experts. Healing as a collective act. Building a socially just mental health system. Transform mental health systems to be equitable and accessible. Increase workforce diversity and advocate for policies promoting mental health equity. Challenge stigma and promote help-seeking behaviors through public education. A call to action. Your role in shaping the future of mental health. Use your skills to advocate for marginalized communities and challenge bias. Engage in communities, volunteer, and raise awareness about mental health disparities. Healing is a collective responsibility. Work together to achieve mental well-being for all.